This presentation is over a case brief titled Griswold versus Connecticut. It was deliberated by members of the Supreme Court of the United States. The following 8 points will be discussed throughout this presentation: the new state law, how the trial begins, the exact issue, the rules of law and the amendments, an analysis, a conclusion, the new public policy, and where we are now. In 1879, a new state law was introduced and passed in Connecticut. It banned all contraceptives, meaning they could not be used nor advised by any medical professional at this time. Many citizens found this law to be repulsive and taking away basic human rights. So on March 29, 1965, nearly a century after the law was formed, a court case opened up against it. It was questioning the validity of policy itself. Defendant, Griswold, stood up against the state of Connecticut for this reason, and the trial began. There were many major issues surrounding Connecticut's law against contraceptives. It was unconstitutional based on the rights that the Fourth and Fifth Amendments gave the citizens of the United States. These amendments were made to protect home and private life from government interference, which is exactly what was occurring at this time. If an individual decided against the law, they were then fined $100. This entire case was a perfect example as to how the government's power can go too far and override citizens' basic rights to privacy and marital intimacy. Diving further into the rules of law at play throughout this case, we can begin to examine the First Amendment. This rule gives the right to privacy protected from government intrusion. Next, the Fourth and Fifth Amendments, as Mr. Justice Black stated in trial, were passed not to broaden the power of the general government, but to limit the federal government powers. The Constitution was made to protect people, not to restrict them. The following are the 3 mentioned amendments with their exact wording. First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Fourth Amendment. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath of or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution provides that no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land of or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Analyzing this case brings me to 2 key points. The first being the potential theory an individual mentioned. Perhaps the reason this law was created was to lessen the temptation of extramarital relationships at the time. The Constitution still continued to forbid homosexuality adultery, and other similar situations, so the banning of contraceptives could have been a way to deter people from taking these actions. The second point I feel needs to be mentioned comes from a quote in Mr. Justice Douglas stated in trial that the Fourth Amendment created a right to privacy, no less important than any other right carefully and particularly reserved to the people. All other rights in the Constitution are giving power to the people, but Connecticut's government was attempting to take some of that back with this law. Many controversies occur when attempting to interpret the rights of privacy of people that the Constitution gives U.S. citizens. Not everything is written so clearly and simply. However, on June 7, 1965, just 2 months after the trial began, the Supreme Court concluded that the law is repulsive and should no longer be in use. The marital bedroom is said to be sacred, and it should not be intruded by the government or anyone else. The removal of this public policy was best described by Mr. Justice Goldberg, who said the concept of liberty protects personal rights, not confined to the specific terms of the Bill of Rights, meaning the Constitution is not always explicit with its word. With this discovery, women were finally allowed to make one more decision for their own bodies. The people of the court realized the government has no place in forcing their own beliefs on all people. It has been less than a century and our nation continues to walk backwards when it comes to progress. With the recent Roe v. Wade media spiraling, many U.S. citizens fear going back to that time of 1965 Connecticut. Taking away a woman's right to handle her own body is at risk once again. Will we continue to make the same mistakes? Will we finally move forward and never look back?